Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
so much for joining my class. Don't forget to sign your attendance in the future, and also make sure you have also done your entrance survey. It's important. I forgot to remind all of you last week to do your entrance survey. Okay, so today we will continue back with chapter 1.3. Okay, this is the last chapter for chapter 1. All right, subchapter 1.3. You can get my notes on future. All the notes are there, so you can just have a look. What else do I have to say? Everything is there, so you can just have a look. Where are we? All right. So today we will continue back our lecture, and today we will start with the new chapter, chapter 1.3. Okay, chapter 1.3 is part of chapter 1 itself. All right. So today we will look at how the operating system boots up. Okay, boots up meaning what happens when you press the start button in your PC. Okay. Okay, so we have something which is called the BIOS, Basic Input Output System. Okay, so in this chapter, you will have a basic understanding of how the operating system boots up, meaning what happens when the operating system is the process which takes place when you press the start button, when it's turned on. Okay, so there are certain steps that is done by the computer and followed by the operating system. This basic input-output or BIOS is same in any operating system. The only difference is the types of files which is started up. Okay, so when you are when you start your Windows operating system, certain files will be turned up, or when you are starting your Mac iOS, then certain files will turn up. Okay, so here you should be able to understand what are these boot sequence step. It's called the typical boot sequence step. That means what happens when you press the start button. Okay, so this is how generally it happens. Okay, so there are several steps. So it's almost about 7 steps that you need to understand. Okay, first, when you power on your PC, okay, the power is supplied to your personal computer or your laptop. And the power will send a signal, okay, this power will send a signal to something which is called the chipset, okay. The chipset will generate a reset signal to the processor until it receives good signal. Okay, what is the chipset? The chipset is a hardware which is located beside the processor over here. Okay, in any computer you have 2 chipsets. You will have 2 chipsets, and this chipset is or you can say controls most of the hardware inside your computer. In any computer, there are always 2 chipsets. It is called the north chipset and the south chipset. Okay, so the north chipset, which is this one here, is closer to the processor. Okay, it's closer to the processor, and the south chipset is it's not closer to the processor, but it's below the north chipset. What does this chipset do? This chipset acts as a hardware to control the inputs and outputs coming from the processor, or going inside the processor or coming out from the processor. Why is it called chipset? In olden days computer, we have so many chips. Chips are small circuits or small hardwares which are located around the computer, inside the motherboard. So now in the latest technology, we have something which is called the chipset, and this chipset is responsible for supplying data to and from the processor. Okay, so the north chipset, as I mentioned just now, is located closer to the processor, and it's handling data coming from the memory, the USB, and other things. However, the north chipset is located near the keyboard mouse, so that will take in this north chipset will take in, sorry, the south chipset will take in data coming from the keyboard, mouse, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are two types. So as you can see, in any computer, even if you are talking about your phone, you will see there is a chipset. And if you're buying iPad or even any tablet, you will see there is a chipset and there is some numbers provided with the chipset. The higher the chipset, the better the chipset is. Okay, so what does that mean? Meaning to say the chipset can receive a lot more input, and it's much more faster for it to be to transfer the data from the chipset to the processor. Why cannot the data go directly into the processor? Simply because if the processor receives too many data coming in, then the processor cannot or does not know which process needs to be processed first and second and third. So the chipset actually controls the data coming in and from the processor and out of the processor. Okay, so this chipset is available. You can see it in your computer. You can see it also inside your phone and everything else. Okay, and anything else. Okay, so there are certain kinds of chipset, and certain types of computer will not call it chipset. They'll have a different name, but basically it's referring to the chipset. Okay, once the button is released, that means you on the button. So now the power comes in, and the chipset will handle this and will notify the processor, tell the processor that there is a data coming in, and this data is coming from your ROM. Random. What is ROM? What does ROM mean? Read-only memory. Sorry, read-only memory. So inside the ROM, there are certain files which are needed for the booting of the operating system or booting of the computer. All right. So once your button is released, then the chipset will automatically inform the processor, telling the processor data is coming in from the ROM. Okay. So this ROM will have a built-in program which is called the boot program. Okay, the boot program. This boot program is similar to any operating system. Let's say now you're having Windows 10, tomorrow you install Linux, it will use the same booting file, which is located inside the ROM. Same thing goes to your phone as well. The phone also has a ROM and a chipset. So when you on your PC, when you're on your phone, the data from the ROM will be passed into the chipset and to the chipset to the processor. Okay, so what does the processor do? The processor takes the file, which is called the boot program, and now loads the file inside the memory, inside the RAM. And where does it locate? Where does it load it to? It will load it into the RAM in file FFF, in address, this address here. Okay, this is normally the address. This address is located right at the top of the RAM. Okay, so where is the top of the RAM? If this is the RAM here, example here, so each of these black boxes here are locations. Each location has an address. Okay, so boot program ni akan duduk dalam, will be passed from the ROM, this one here, inside into the RAM here. But how does it transfer the data? First, it will transfer it into the chipset. Next, from the chipset, masuk dalam processor, and processor masuk dalam RAM. Why does it have to go through so many steps? Simply because The PC does not know where to pass this file to. Boot program ni nak hantar ke mana? So siapa yang akan cakap? The processor will tell the personal computer, okay, now transfer this data into the RAM at location FFFH. Okay, this is in hexadecimal. Okay, so once the program, which is called the boot program, is inside the RAM, now the PC can start. Okay, all right. Okay, so this instruction, which is the boot program instruction, will tell the processor, okay, now the program is here. Now you can start loading the computer. Load the computer. Okay. Next, the boot program will perform what is called the power on self-test. So boot program ni buat apa? Boot program ni, one of it, dia akan buat post. Power on self-test. What is a post? That means it will check, the personal computer will check if all of the hardwares are working fine. Example, is the hardware, is the monitor working fine? Is the mouse working fine? Is the keyboard working fine? Is the hard disk working fine? Okay, so during this process, you can see suddenly your monitor will be blinking, your keyboard will be blinking. That means the post program is being done. That means the BIOS program, the main one of the first step in the BIOS program is to check each and every hardware is working. Any hardware. The hard disk is also a hardware. The keyboard is also a hardware. The mouse is also a hardware. The printer which is connected to the PC is also a hardware. The scanner which is connected to the PC is also a hardware. Okay, so it will look for all the hardwares and check if the hardware is located is working or not working. All right. That also goes to step 4. We'll start looking for video card. Why does it look for video card? Because it needs to start the graphics so that the information can be displayed on the monitor. So step 5, it also looks for other devices. So it looks for your hard disk. Okay, it looks for your hard disk and it will try to execute all this. It will try to make sure the hard disk is working. And step 6, now the display is coming on the screen. Okay, and it does some other tests because it's loading now. Now you can see welcome to Windows on your screen and so on and so forth. Now it will check the system inventory, make sure again all the ports are working, all the connection to your PC is working, and so on until it's done, until it goes to step 11. Okay, step 11. Now, in step 11, now the operating system files are to be located and to be run. Between step number 1 to step number 11, usually it takes about 6 seconds to 10 seconds. Okay, so within the next 0 to 10 seconds, the operating system files need to be loaded and coming out on your screen. All right. Sometimes some BIOS will even allow you to boot from your CD. It is possible. Why is that so? Because you have to remember the boot program does not have the operating system. Operating system files are located where? Inside your hard disk. So in order for the boot program to open and run the operating system files, it needs to get access to your hard disk. Okay, so some operating system allows the operating system even to be stored inside the CD-ROM. Boleh juga, tak ada masalah. That is why it is possible for you to install your operating system files inside your thumb drive. Boleh, tak ada masalah. You can install your thumb drive, you can install OS dalam thumb drive, tak ada masalah. Okay, so if you once you want to run the PC, you cucuk je thumb drive, barulah your PC can be turned on. Okay, and next you will read all the files inside the hard disk, all the operating system files inside your hard disk until the operating system is available, and that completes step 14. So basically, what types of files are to be, what types of operating system files are needed? Okay, first it will locate for this particular file. Next, it will open this file. Okay, These are all operating system files. It's all operating. So we are now loading Windows kernel initialization. So as I mentioned in the previous chapter, the kernel is the core of an operating system, and you have to run this before the operating system comes out. Okay, so these are the files 1, 2, 3, 4 files which are needed and which are needed to run the operating system. Where are these files located? These files are located inside your hard disk. Can these files be located inside your thumb drive? Yes, it is possible that these files are located inside your thumb drive. Okay. However, these files are only applicable to Windows. Kalau Windows, inilah file-file dia yang. If you are using Linux operating system, then the file changes. So these are the files that is needed for Linux operating system. Linux operating system ni dia kat sini is Windows, right? Windows means this is the folder. Kalau in Linux, this is the file, this is the folder. INIT. This is the operating system folder. And these are the files. Okay, so inside this, there are these files, and these are the sub files which are needed. Okay, next we also call we can also do something which is called the warm boot. The cold boot is when your PC was off and you start it. That is cold because of course kita boleh cakap lah when the PC is not on, it's not hot, so that is called the cold boot. A warm boot is something like when you reboot the system. When you reboot the system, the BIOS does not take effect because the program is already there. So it will just refresh your refresh your RAM and automatically load all the necessary files. In a cold boot, then it has to go through ROM and your basic input-output file, which is the boot program. In a warm boot, the boot program does not take place. However, only the operating system files take place. Okay, so the boot process, okay, the post is skipped. Okay, post is skipped because kalau you buat warm boot, you tak perlu check lah all your hardware because it's assuming all your hardware is working. Now only so dia akan skip dalam 8 ke 7 step. Dia terus jump pada step 8, which is loading your operating system files. Okay, next we are going to understand what is partitioning. Partitioning is the process of dividing your hard disk into several partitions. Okay, so your hard disk space can be divided into several partitions. Okay, what does that mean? It's like this. Okay, so let's say this is your hard disk. So your hard disk katakan dalam 300 senang kira lah 300 megabyte kecil je. Okay, so you will have this is your primary. Primary is where the OS files is. This is your primary partition. Okay, primary partition. And you also have your logical partition. Primary partition always means that you can put your operating system file here. Logical partitions, you cannot put your operating system files here. So primary, what's the difference between primary and logical? Okay, so primary partitions is where the operating system is located or can be located. However, logical partitions are part of the primary partitions. So G is part of D and H is part of E. So why do we do logical and primary partitions? Well, the main reason is to make things simpler. Okay, so you can put all your files here, your picture files here. Maybe you can separate because why do you do this? So that is faster to access certain files. However, always remember the operating system files, be it you run Linux or Windows or iOS, must be in your primary partitions. Some operating system calls logical partition as extended. Itu pun tak ada masalah. It's the same thing as your logical partitions. Alright. So, I forgot to explain this part. In the primary partition, in the first primary partition, where the operating system is located, you have something inside the hard disk which is called the MBR. MBR stands for Master Boot Record. Master Boot Record is a location inside your hard disk which keeps track of all your partitions and all your logical partitions. So it keeps track only. Okay. So it contains the bootstrap program yang you dah load tadi, and it also contains the location of each partition, the size of the partition, and the size of logical partition as well. Okay, so MBR ni dia the function of MBR location. MBR is not a hard disk, it's a type of location inside your hard disk. Okay, so what does MBR hold? The MBR holds the data or the information about the partitions. How many partitions are available, how many logical partitions are available, what is the size of this partitions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the bootstrap program will be loaded inside the MBR. Where does the bootstrap program come from? The bootstrap program comes from the, where does it come from? The bootstrap program comes from the comes from the Windows, the operating system files, which is located inside your hard disk. Okay, inside your RAM, it's called the BIOS, Basic Input Output System. That is only to tell the PC kat mana file tu. Okay, that is to initiate saja. But the program itself duduk di dalam hard disk. Okay, and it's loaded inside your MBR. Okay, these are also other examples of partition. Okay, so you can have like this primary, and you can divide it into a few logical. Boleh juga, tak ada masalah. Extended, that means this is actually a part of this. This DEF is part of the 2 gig here. So let's say all of this C, the whole picture here, this one here, is size here 2 gig, but is divided into 4. That means each of these have the similar size, or maybe this has 1 gig and the balance of 2 gig is inside here. Boleh juga, tak ada masalah. Okay. Oh, sorry. This one, the whole is 4 gig. So that means 2 kat sini and 2 kat sini. But if you really look at it, it is all in one 4 gig, but it's divided. So the primary is where the operating system is 2 gig, and the next 2 gig is divided into 3. So maybe each of them have X number of space. Okay, so next we also have partition book sector. Okay, partition book sector pula is the macam MBR, but is located inside the first partition. So the first partition knows this one. Inside this primary partition akan ada table which points to each of the extended. Each of the extended comes here. Okay, that means dalam primary partition pun ada information about the extended, or what we say the logical hard disk as well. Okay, and inside the extended pun ada benda yang sama juga. So inside the extended ada extended yang pertama, ada info pasal extended yang lain. So what I'm trying to say is, in the primary partition there is a table showing all the extended, and in the extended there is also a partition showing all the extended. There's a table lah. So there is a table here which shows all what available extended partitions are available. Okay, are you with me? Faham tak?
Yes, sir.
All right. Next we go into so these are all the same. Okay. Next we go into if you are loading multiple OS boot. Okay, multiple. That means in your PC, you are running two operating systems. But always remember, in any one time, dalam satu masa, you can only run one operating system. Now I'm running Windows. Bila saya restart, I can run Linux. But I cannot run Windows on one side and Linux on the other side. It's not work. So for each OS boot, it's different. As I showed you in the previous slide, the files which are the boot program files are different. Windows boot program berbeza dengan Linux boot program files. You can refer to the slides before this. Okay, so this is how the interface will look like. Basically, you can run two operating systems at one point of time. But, sorry, at one point you can run one only, but you have to choose which operating system you want to load. Okay, let me see what else we need to know. Okay, these are all info, you can read this on your own. Okay, now what are, sorry, we're coming to the last one here. What are the benefits of having multiple OS? Why do we need to have multiple OS? Well, there are not much difference of why do you need multiple OS. Although it's easy to configure, memang senang nak configure if you're running, but it's not possible to have Windows and iOS. It does not work because iOS punya hardware configuration is totally different from Windows. But you can configure your PC to run one side, to run on Windows and to run on Linux, or to run on two types of Windows. It is possible. But why do you do that? One is there's not much more advantage, but the drawback is there. There is a setback, okay? Because each Windows or each operating system, okay, the MBR files are different and everything else, all the partition files are different, okay? Why does people do multiple operating system? Because some programs run on different types of operating system, some programs don't. Okay, sometimes the older version program cannot run on the newer version of operating system. Faham tak? Program lama, but it cannot run on the new operating system. Okay, so that is why you might have two operating system. Okay, two operating system. But when you save a file, contohnya you buka sekarang, you buka Windows 10, you do something, you save it, you save your Microsoft Word, and then you restart your PC, you open Windows 8. Can the file of Windows 10 be read in Windows 8? No, it's not possible. The higher cannot be read in the lower, but the lower operating system can be read in the higher operating system. Okay? All right. So there are some limitations. You can read this on your own. Okay. So that is all for today. So what have we learned for today? Okay. So the most important thing that you need to understand in this lecture is the booting concept. How does the operating system boot? Okay. So you need to understand the files which are involved over here. Ini biasalah keluar dalam your exam, your test, your quiz. Dia akan keluar slide number 15 ni. What are the types of files involved? So you have to remember these are the file types. Okay, CWT, LDR, Windows System 32, SMSS.exe. Okay, these are the type of files. Okay, and these are the types of file for your Linux operating system. Okay, Linux operating system, the folder is in here in Windows is called Windows. Easy je. Kalau kat sini, the operating system file is init. Okay, init is a folder in Linux which holds the operating system files. Okay, so you have to remember this diagram as well. Next, you also have to remember what is cold boot, what is warm boot. It's also important for you to remember. And what is partition, what is extended partition, what is logical partition. You have to remember. Okay, So extended and logical partition are similar. Sama je. Okay, sama je. Alright, so you have to remember that, and you have to have a basic understanding of what is master boot record. Alright, so that's all for today. Because I have to stop early, I have something to do. Any questions so far? Ada soalan-soalan yang you want to ask me? Was it this class ke yang explain to me, yang ask me about chipset? Saya tak ingat. Kelas ni ke kelas 3B?
Kelas 3B saya.
3B, okay. But
Saya nak tanya
yes,
contoh kalau
yes.
contoh kalau kita ada letak OS dalam pendrive kan.
Yes.
Lepas tu kita punya laptop currently is running on contohlah Windows 10 tapi dalam pendrive tu Linux kan. So kita reboot sambil kita cucuk pendrive tu, masih dia akan keluar lagi tak yang kita boleh pilih OS tu? Ke tak keluar?
You have to go to you kena tekan F8 dulu. F8 kan dia keluar yang BIOS tu kan. So dalam BIOS tu dia akan cakap dia nak baca mana kan, dia nak baca C drive dulu ke apa kan. So you have to set so that dia baca your thumb drive.
Oh, itu dia kena set lah.
Itu yang kena set because you have installed the Linux tu dalam thumb drive. That one you have to set. But if you install your Linux dalam hard disk yang sama, then you will come to an option. Automatically dia akan option kat situ.
Okay.
Dia akan bagi option.
Okay.
Bagus juga soalan you install dalam thumb drive tu sebab in illegal kedai komputer cyber cafe yang allow main game tu, sometimes they install pirated version of operating system. So bila ada raid daripada polis, diorang akan cabut thumb drive. So bila diorang cabut thumb drive, bila pihak berkuasa on PC tu, tak ada apa-apa lah. There is no proof yang ada pirated software sebab diorang dah cabut thumb drive. That is the main reason lah. Saya tak mengajar lah, tapi that is how they do it lah dalam cyber cafe yang they install pirated version of your Windows macam tu lah. So it's all in the thumb drive. So bila kita cabut je thumb drive, tak boleh on. Alright?
Ya, rate tu selalu siapa yang buat sih?
Can you repeat your question? Apa? Siapa yang buat?
Yang rate tu. Yang check lah.
Itulah kementerian apa yang multimedia dan tu.
Oh, itu.
Siapa menteri dia tak tahulah. Tak ingat siapa menteri dia. Itulah dia orang yang check for pirated software semua.
Dia nak check ada lesen ke tak ada lesen kan?
Exactly, dia nak check. Tapi selalu berlaku di cyber cafe yang itulah cyber cafe yang main game banyak tu. Because it's not, harga dia mahal if you want to install, mahal lah kalau nak install satu-satu dengan ni kan, tapi ada lah cara dia. Okay, so this is what they do lah, pirated version. Okay. Alright, thank you so much for today. Please sign my attendance and I have to leave you a bit early today because I have some urgent matters to do. And inshallah, I will see you in the next class. Thank you so much. And make sure you sign your attendance and kalau belum buat your entrance survey, tolong buat your entrance survey. Alright, thank you so much. Ada soalan lagi ke? Ada any questions you want to ask me? No? Okay. Thank you so much and inshallah, I will see you in your next